Let's talk about some snapping tools that are built into Cinema 4D. And again, for the purpose of this demonstration, I'll create two objects. For example, let's say a cube and a sphere. Okay, I'll just move this sphere a bit. And well, I can select them both and enter 100 here because they are 200 meters tall by default, and if I enter 100, then the distance from these two axes will be 100. That is exactly for them to lie on the plane. It's not really important, I just do that because I like the neatness. Okay, let me convert them by hitting C button. And now I have two polygon objects. So if I now go to a point mode and select this cube, you will see here, if I reselect my move tool, you will see here we discussed the modeling axis and the soft selection option, but here is the third option, this tab, snap settings. And if I enable this snapping, I will have some options here. But I find it to be much more easier to press the P key on your keyboard and you will get exactly the same options. The pop-up menu is exactly the same. Okay? And again, you can see this bar. We can click on that bar simply to create this menu permanent. Otherwise, let me show you. If you press P and do some action, the menu will disappear. So P key, and click the bar, and we can actually dock this somewhere. For example, you can dock it somewhere, let's say here. Okay, so now our snapping tools are docked. Let me just rescale this a bit so we have a more of a working space. Okay, so let me select a single point here, and for example I will enable this 3D snapping. It will be much more easier if you see the grid here on this sphere, so I will again enable this graph shading lines and we will see the actual geometry. It will help us a bit. So let me turn off all those options just to have a nice clean start. So let's, for example, enable point snapping because we want this point to snap somewhere. So if I now move my point, when it comes to close to another point, will snap to it. See that instant snap. Okay, it's much easier than manually precisely positioning. This works on the object itself and it works on another geometry. So now you can see my point snaps to crazy to all points. Okay, see here. Okay, so basically if I move, it will snap to the closest points I get to. Okay, let me undo that a bit so we can have a clean start. You can then imagine that these work also. So for example, I want my points to snap on edges. Okay, so if I now drag, it will snap not only to the points, but it will snap to the edges also. Maybe this sphere is a little too detailed for this, but this will be good enough for this presentation. Do that. So you can see there are many options of what will snap and how it will snap. For example, I can snap my axis. So if I go to a object mode and I leave this point snapping on and leave my axis snapping, I will actually be able to, let me undo that, I have to be in axis mode, sorry about that, and I will be actually be moving my axis, and when I come close to a point, it will snap to it. Okay? So you can imagine how this can be useful. It works also the other way around. So if I select a point here on the sphere, let's say I want this point, well, let's utilize something else. Let's say this edge. We want this edge to snap to polygon center. We will turn off this axis snapping. Now if I drag, it will, when I come close, snap to the polygon center. Okay? In fact, it won't until, you see, everybody makes mistakes, until I enable this edge snapping. So we want the edge to snap and to snap to polygon center. Okay? And you can see it now snaps to the polygon center. See that? See that instant snap? Okay? Now, these options here, construction, plane, and grid snapping, let me delete this sphere, it will be much more clearer to you. Let me turn this off also. It's best visible and understandable in point mode. So I'll go in my point mode and select this point perhaps. And now, this is a construction plane and the grid. So if I, for example, enable grid snapping, then when I move my point, it will just snap to the closest point it encounters. For example, now, see that? It snaps right into it. Okay? If I enable this grid line snapping, then the snapping will occur on these grid lines. You can exactly define how this grid looks like and how much geometry it has, and it will really help you if you're modeling something technical or architectural and so on. So let me just demonstrate it. You see how it jumped exactly on that line, and we again lift off and snap, we land down. Okay, these tools are really useful. If for some reason you are asking yourself, what are these 2D and 2.5D snapping? Well, they are used in orthogonal views. Okay, so if you middle mouse button, if you click your middle mouse button anywhere in the viewport, you will get the default for views. And now, when you are over some other view and you again click your middle mouse button, you will expand that view. Okay, and this, for example, this is your orthogonal view. That basically means it has no depth, it only has 2 dimensions. So 2D snapping is a very good option for ortho views. Again, middle click here, middle click in perspective, which is a 3D view, where you have the height, where you have the length, and when you have the depth. Okay, pretty simple. Okay, you can experiment also with this. This spline snapping is when you create a spline, so you can snap spline points whatever you like. I just want to say, you saw me made a tiny mistake about edges and points. Well, no matter how long you do 3D, it can be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you will always make mistakes. In fact, you will make so many mistakes when you are working, so get used to it. Making mistakes is normal. That's why there is a brilliant function, it's called undo. So feel free, experiment with any option. Make mistakes, you can always undo what you have done. Okay? And when you are done with snapping option, don't forget to turn this to no snapping. Otherwise some weird stuff may happen and you will wonder what the hell is happening, why is this acting this way? Well, most certainly the snapping is on. Okay? So I think this concludes this boring, geeky, technical part about tools, and we will actually do some modeling in the next lesson. Okay, see you in our first modeling lesson.